once again, we are back with the Biz Coach Show. I am Chris Flowers. I am the executive producer, and I am here with Eric T. Whitmoyer. He is the founder and CEO of My Biz Coaches and the Biz Coach Show. What is going on, boss? How you doing?
Not too much. I'm having a great day. Excited about what takes place in just a few more days, right?
Couple more days.
We got a lot of things going on as we get ready and ramp up and prepare for 2026. So excited as it relates at My Biz Coaches, right, for all the different things we got going on there. And then we have a number of new things that we'll be introducing for the Biz Coach Show as we move into 2026 as well. So excited about some of the new adaptations and changes, and so I'm excited to start putting that out there to everybody so they can see what's going on.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be cool. So, are you a turkey or a ham guy, or what are you doing
all
over
the
there?
way?
Are you?
Turkey all the way.
Oh, okay. See, I'm more of a ham guy when it comes to the traditional stuff, but actually, at least I'm making manicotti. That's what. Yeah. It's an Italian thing, baby. We're gonna,
Awesome. Well, let's get into today's topic. Today we're going to talk about business credit. So something you happen to know a little bit about. Excited to be able to kind of piggyback on this topic. I know we tried this a couple weeks ago and it didn't quite work so well for us. So looking forward to pulling this one together here. But
improvise, adapt, overcome, baby. We're gonna get through this one.
That's right. Absolutely. All right. So slightly different take we're going to do this time around, but like I said, same topic. But want to kind of touch on a handful of different things. So certainly with your experience, Chris, looking forward to some of your perspective and insight as it relates to your experience over the 30 years in banking, right? As well as in the loan space, business loan space, and providing loans for business owners.
Correct.
So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. The first topic is business credit is a strategic asset, not a convenience.
Most definitely.
Yeah, so that's I can't help but I get this conversation comes up. I'm going to tell you it comes up. I'm going to say multiple times with every client in the first year that we work together. Initially, when I'm doing an assessment, just kind of where are you at? What have you done? What have you done to this point? Kind of thing. Then it's more strategic in that, hey. You have X number of dollars in top line revenue, you should probably have about 20% in available credit. That's kind of the line I draw in the sand for my clients. And I say, look, you're doing $100,000. You should have at least a $20,000 line of credit.
Minimum. Yeah.
You're doing $250, right? You should have closer to $50,000 line. And I say line of credit, I don't mean specifically a line of credit, but credit cards, a line of credit, any combination of that.
Yeah.
Something to bridge the gap in case there's a cash flow shortage, which is the primary reason that that we tell people to do that. I think one of the most important things is the different ways that you and I both talk about how you can use that credit, right? The different ways that you can leverage it for your business. So one of the ones that we talk about obviously is just a cash flow shortage, right? I can't account for what may or may not go wrong in any business. And the reality is any given day, we're in the sixth year since, we're approaching our 6th year since COVID. Yeah. Before that, in 2008, there was a market drop of about 20%. Prior to that, there was the 2008. Before that, there was the .com bust in 2001. Right. Just a series of different circumstances that have played out over the last 20 some odd years. And it's the cycle was always said to have been about 7 years, right? Business cycle, where we just go through these ebbs and flows. Right. And so as a business owner, we have to get our owners to understand it's not what you do wrong that you're going to need the credit for. It's what happens that you're not prepared for.
Correct.
Right. That's the big thing. And I mean, Chris, how many times have you had conversations with people to try and get them a loan, and because they hadn't done some work, established their business credit and things like that, they either didn't get the option, either didn't get any credit, or it got very limited resources available to them because they hadn't done that the due diligence or set themselves up and to be able to capitalize on that. How often would you say you saw that?
Several. Like, I mean, it was countless. I mean,
Yeah.
and not only that, they didn't have their numbers together. They didn't know
Right.
their numbers well enough to know where they needed to be and how to strategically place the capital. So, they just say, they just have this thing like, oh, I need a line of credit for what? What are we deploying this line of credit for? Things
Right.
like that. And then of course they'll come in with all kinds of creative, oh, I need to buy this piece of equipment. I'm like, no, that's not how we roll. We
Right.
don't use that. That's not the tool for that particular need, want, or desire. So again, but I mean, that was my job to educate them. Okay,
Right.
here's, talk to me about what you want to do. Here's the different tools that we have to implement to achieve that goal. But you got to know what's going on in your business well enough to be able to strategically place those. You know what I mean?
Right, absolutely. And to your point, right, the finances, right, having a good handle on the finances, which is for in our space, it's of our 6 core competencies, it's core competency number 2, your financial acumen. Yep. How well do you know your financials in your business? And if you know them well, you would know that you should have at least, like I said, 20% of available credit for your business to be able to help offset any shortfall. And I use a number like 100,000 to make it easy math. But if you had $1 million in top line revenue, you should have at least 200, maybe even closer to $300,000 in available credit. Right? I'm not talking about a term loan. I'm talking about a couple of credit cards and a line of credit and probably $150,000 line of credit. Because if you got that much cash flow coming through, $1 million, that's $100,000 a month. You want, ideally, you'd like to have 2 months of operating cash available, right, to cover all the expenses for 2 or 3 months. But until you get to that,
probably closer to 6. But yeah.
Absolutely. Right. But until you built it, I mean, the first step is to get 1, then to get 2.
Yeah. I mean, you got to build up when you're starting out, but when you're up and running, you're doing $1 million plus, you got to have some capital,
Absolutely.
Things
But
like
the key is that until you
ahead.
get to that point, that's where we leverage credit, right? That's when we make sure that we have something to fall back on. Because it's not uncommon for a small business like that, as it's ramping up to that $1 million threshold, it's not uncommon to have a shortfall in cash.
Correct.
Or to like the other thing we were talking about is take advantage of opportunities.
I was literally just going to bring that up. Exactly. Because like I said, you have opportunity to land a particular contract, but you don't have the capital to get the materials and get the job started. You can build a customer maybe in advance, things like that. But if you're, like said, if you got a contract with like DOD, they're not doing that.
Right. Yeah. Great point.
Things like that. But so if you don't have that credit available, if you don't have that capital available in some way, shape, or form, or even if you're like, I'm the all cash guy, I just do everything cash and I bootstrap everything and do that whole thing. If you're going to do that, okay, you just put out a bunch of capital to secure that job, things like that. Now, what your trucks are breaking down. Yep. Or now, hey, you know what? The AR you were expecting that was paying steadily 30 days to just renegotiate, say, hey, we're going to pay more like 45.90.
Right.
And you don't have now Mr. Bootstrap guy, Mr. Ramsey guy, you don't have the cash available because you just invested it in that big contract, which is great. And it's going to bring in a lot of revenue. But what about the immediate now?
That's right. Yeah. And any project like that, that's a big takeaway, because any big project like that can have that kind of caveat to it where you got to front load the expenses. And the trucking business is wrought with that, right? I mean, it's like, trucking business, I would say that 80, maybe even 90% of the truckers out there factor just because they don't get paid for 30, 45 days and they got to go out and pay for diesel tomorrow. Right. They're going to go fill up that truck at least in the next 2-3 days. Especially if they're long, well, it doesn't matter long haul or not. I mean, they're going to be filling up on a regular basis. And if they don't have the cash flow or the credit to keep that going until they get that nice fat paycheck from the deliveries that they do, which could be weeks and even a month out, right? Even a month and a half. I mean, I've had some, drag us out 45 days, and then heaven forbid they slow pay you on top
if
of
you're
that.
driving for Walmart, they might just turn around and say, "Yeah, we'll pay you when we pay you."
Yeah. I mean, that's you never know that there's opportunities like that, and so anyway, I think the point here is to really clearly communicate. There's a number of different reasons why you want to make sure that you have established business credit, and again, we're not talking about personal credit; we're talking about business credit, which is a completely different vehicle. They do use your personal credit to establish that line of credit, but it does not reflect on your personal credit score unless you were to default on it, and then in which case,
Correct.
then obviously it would have a negative impact. But
that is correct.
If you keep up your payments on your business credit cards, your business line of credit, everything will none of it will show on your personal credit score, which will keep your personal credit score nice and high, well into the 700s where we want it to be. And the business credit, if you do use a good portion of it, it doesn't hurt you nearly as much on the business side because they know that you're using it for good reason. Yeah, ideally you want to stay at the 30% and all that kind of stuff.
You hope they're using it for good reason, not going out and buying boats.
Well, and that's the key,
shit.
right? Is we need to use intelligent use of the credit, right? But
I'm gonna go out and buy a brand new Escalade because I can write it off on my day. Get up like.
That's really? Right.
Okay. Don't get me started. I mean, don't get me even started on this.
Yeah.
Anyway,
using a business credit card that has a 0% interest for a year and allowing you to finance a purchase or something like that by using 0%. Those are all intelligent purchases, right?
Smart.
So, it's leveraging your cash. And then remember, this is the most important thing as we talk about business credit today specifically, is that cash is king. Cash on hand is probably the most valuable thing that you could possibly have, whether you're a service-based business or a product-based business, whatever it is that you do, cash on hand is the most, especially in the first 3 or 4 phases of business growth, which would take you up to that $1 million threshold. And even then, the argument's probably legit that it's pretty much, until you get to the point where you have a surplus of cash, you're a Google or a Microsoft or Walmart, where you're sitting on billions and billions of cash that you can kind of move around as you need. And even then they use credit.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the whole point is to identify that there's really a number of different reasons why you want to do it. And the whole cash model thing, kudos to you, but I guarantee you it will be one of the reasons why you don't grow your business the way you could, because it will limit your options that are available to you.
Absolutely.
I think you even mentioned before when we were talking about this, being able to pre-buy certain things because you take advantage of a discount that you can get, right?
Right. You got one of your vendors out there that will wholesale you a whole pallet full of XYZ, and give you a nice fat discount if you pay cash to anything like that. And you have it available, boom, take advantage of that. And then if you know your margins well enough, okay, I paid this much for this. I'm going to price this into the job. I'm going to have and you got to know where, how you can expand your margin out, and you can easily make that up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great point. All right. So let's go and put into number 2. Number 2 is strong business credit separates hustlers from real businesses. So we talk about this when we talk about the 8 phases of scale. We talk about phase 1 is side hustle, right? Phase 1 is startup mode. Phase 1 is $0 to $100,000. And I will tell you that a lot of people, they get into that phase and they get stuck in that mentality. And one of the things that can help you grow out of that phase is leveraging credit, like we referenced a minute ago. But it's not so much of the getting the credit. It's what you have to do to get your business ready to be able to get credit, to be extended credit in the company name. One of the most significant things that I saw for instance, my trucking business was when I actually established business credit. And I've shared this story before on the show. We started buying trucks, and all of a sudden I get to 8 trucks. And I'm like, I just get a contract and I'm going to need 6 more trucks. And that contract's like $1 million a year contract. And I call the place where I'm buying my trucks, and they're like, yeah, we can't help you. And I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, no, you got 8 trucks. You got over $1 million on your name. In financing, we can't help you buy more trucks. You don't have an income to support that. I'm like, no, it's not me, it's the business. I'm not paying this on my own personal pocket. Or like, oh, you have an LLC? Yes. S corp? Yes. Blah blah blah. Okay. Well, do you have your financials? Can you send those over? Sure can. You know what? Would you like my business plan to go along with it? What, you have a business plan too? Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, let's
Well,
take a
they're
look
not
at
used to
that.
truckers having accounting backgrounds to where,
Right. Right. That's
you're
fair.
a little different than the average trucking company guy. Let's be clear. Let's be clear.
But within a 3 hour phone conversation, in the time that it took me to get from El Centro, California to Phoenix, Arizona in 3 hours, I was able to negotiate the purchase of those 6 trucks because electronically I was able to send all those documents. They reviewed them, took them up to the underwriting department, ran it through as a company, and gave us and extended us credit in the company name based on the cash flows and the finances and everything like that. And so we were able to close that deal, get that done. But initially, I was under the impression. I mean, when I went to accounting, they told us, "Oh, if you have a contract that says you're going to get $1 million, people will be willing to loan you up to $200,000 or $300,000 against that $1 million." Well, I tried that, and they were like, "Yeah, no, it doesn't work like that."
Now there are some that will. There are.
Well, and it
There
all depends, right? Is that how established are you? How big a company? What do your assets and finances
yeah,
look like?
it's going to depend on a lot of things, and a lot of banks, traditional banks, won't do it. So again, it's going to be available,
Right,
but it's not going to be cheap. But
right.
it's there. Just
Right,
saying.
right. Great point. Great point. Yeah, and it won't. To your point, it won't likely come from the Wells Fargo's, the Chases,
Oh
the
no,
U.S. Right?
no,
Yeah, yeah. It's
no,
gonna be
no.
different banks.
Private
Absolutely.
private equity. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely,
yeah. And I think
absolutely.
that's an important part because I've had a conversation with a number of different clients over the 6 years that I've been doing this, and more specifically over the last 2.5 since we partnered with SMBC. And one of the things with that we really identified when working through this, a lot of people are like, oh, well, I'm just going to go talk to my normal bank. I'm going to go to Wells Fargo. I'm going to go to Chase. I'm going to go to so and so, and I'm going to walk into the counter and I'm going to get some credit. I'm like, yeah, okay, well, that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about big boy credit. We're talking, even if it's business credit, and maybe not corporate credit yet, but in which we'll identify that here in a minute. But business credit, but like real credit, where the company is taking responsibility for it, and
Mm-hmm.
they're using the company finances to determine how much you're eligible for. There's a bridge between you getting that first business credit card on your personal credit score,
Yeah.
right, and getting extended credit, and the company having the cash flows and your financials being in a situation where they say, you know what, the company's doing $100,000 a month, right? We see that you can support that. We're willing to extend you $100,000 line of credit,
Mm-hmm.
right? Oh, and by the way, here's a $30,000 credit card to go along with it,
Correct. Yep.
right? I mean but that's big boy credit now. We're talking real numbers now. Now we can actually do something with that,
And
and
let's be
that's a
clear, you got to have an established track record. You got to have good
yep,
financial. Like I said, you can't be playing the whole shell game of I'm going to write everything off and I'm showing losses and this, that,
yeah,
and the
great
third.
point.
And,
Yep,
the whole, I don't want to pay the man, da, 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 that whole thing. Cause like I said, you're setting yourself up to where, you're not able to use leverage.
right. Yep.
You're not, because your tax returns don't reflect it. And yes, you will have to write checks quarterly to the IRS. It's just going to happen. Again, if you want to talk big boy credit, it is what it is, and the IRS is definitely the 800-pound gorilla in the room, and it's just going to happen. But
Right.
if you want to play with the big boys, this is where we're going to go.
Right. Yeah. Great point. So huge factor to consider because what it really allows you to do is kind of take things to the next level. It opens a number of doors. I mean, I've mentioned this story before about how I was able to establish a line of credit with initially with Pilot and then with Love's, which are two
Right.
big fuel depot centers for trucking companies. And I was able to leverage it again because I had good financials, because I had my data, and the company was up and running and established. And my personal credit wasn't phenomenal, but it was good. I think I was like 680 at that point. It was still had come down from like 760
Well,
because
it's
of
because you
those
were leverage.
trucks,
Yeah, because you were
because I
leverage.
had those trucks on my account. Right, exactly.
Right.
And it wasn't like we weren't making the payments. It was just the amount of debt, which is all the more
Correct.
reason why you want to get it off your personal credit and move it into business credit. But that corporate
Definitely.
credit, that also sends the message that you're a real business, right? So let's say you go to sell, Chris, how does that reflect? Right? If I'm assessing a business for valuation, and the company actually carries its own credit, I've actually seen the acquirer of the business. So let's say I'm buying your business and you've got really good business credit and you've been using it and paying it and everything like that. And you got let's say you got, I don't know, $500,000 worth of available credit to the company. And I actually buy your company and then use that credit to acquire a portion of the business. Or to get you can actually I can actually use your existing business credit to buy your business, because I'd be assuming I'm taking on all assumption of debt and everything, responsibilities and
I'd say,
legal.
you got to take on, all the debt, and if it,
it's not just an asset sale at this point. I'm actually buying the whole business, but that's a feasible solution. Additionally, as an assessor, somebody who's assessing your business to purchase, the fact that you have credit like that is actually a huge interest to me, because I'm like, oh, well, that means you pay your bills, you know what you're doing, you built the big boy business, you're growing it, and in a meaningful way, which means you likely have a lot of the things that are typically not good about small business. You probably have those mostly in order, which intrigues me even more, because now I'm buying a real functional business as opposed to Chris's job.
Right. And again, I think we need to, I just want to clarify too, as well. It's like, okay, and this is where working with you is key, where when you're starting out and you're that sub 500 or you're sub that 100,000, revenue, things like that, there are stages to go. But just like everything else we do, we play checkers. We don't play chess at My Biz Coaches. Like, okay, we're going to start here, but we're going to go to phase 2 and phase 3. So we're working on, and then we're always working on the exit strategy. So but like I said, there's ways to do it. Everything that we're talking about right now, you got to have at least 2 to 3 years solid tax returns, things like that. We got to have, where you're showing profits. And this is not the startup game. This is the, this is the next phase up. Yeah, this is the next phase up from, we're talking 100,000 probably to what, $500,000, 750.
Yeah, million. I would say in that range. Yeah, absolutely. You may not be the million. You may not necessarily be in the million, but you're definitely a couple 100,000 a month, or a month, but a couple 100,000 a year, and definitely, pushing that 750 range somewhere in there.
I think the one stat that you always put out there would be another thing to reiterate to really drive this home. What was it again? There's only like 6% of the companies out there are $1 million plus in revenue, or so.
$1 million. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Right. So think about that for a minute. So everything that we're talking about here, a lot of people are not doing it.
Right.
So if you want to be a part of that top 6% companies out there, listen to this show and take this advice if you want to get to that status, because apparently not a lot of people are doing it.
Right. Yeah. Great point. Yeah. That is a legitimate challenge that also factors in here. Right. All right. So listen, number 3 is business credit protects your personal financial ecosystem. So I alluded to that a minute ago. How taking on debt on behalf of your company on your personal credit will definitely impact your personal credit score, especially if you find yourself in a situation. I mean, just in generally speaking, the way personal credit is established is based on your ability to pay and what you've demonstrated, right, as far as payment terms and things like that. However, there's one factor that always takes into consideration is what's your available credit and how much of it are you using. Mm-hmm. And if you start exceeding 30%, it's going to have a significant impact on your personal credit score. Yes. If you exceed 50 or 75%,
you're getting crushed.
And it's going to pull you down 100, 150 points, easy. Yeah, very, very likely anyway. Yep. So saying that out loud and hearing that, if you have let's say a 720, that's a good, reasonable score. A lot of entrepreneurs, we don't usually have 800 FICOs because we're always negotiating. We're always trying to do some kind of deal or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, but let's say we got a good 720. You pull it down by 100 points, 620. Man, banks aren't going to
work. Now we're done. I can't work with you.
No. Or if you do work with me, you're going to sell me the devil, right? You're going to sell me the bad programs. You're going to sell me and I say bad programs.
Don't say it. Don't say those 3 letters. I do not like. Don't say those 3 letters. Don't even do it.
MCA. Yeah, it's and to be clear, I say this all the time. Chris doesn't 100% agree with me, and that's okay. We can agree to disagree. It's not always a bad thing. It's just usually not ever a good thing. If it's the only option you have, it's an option, to Chris's point earlier. It just may not be a very good option. And when it's not a very good option, the discipline that it takes to take on an MCA loan, here's the problem, folks. It's like a payday loan for your business. And they take the money and they don't really care whether or not you have enough to cover your other expenses and your payroll, and or whether or not you take a paycheck for yourself. That doesn't matter. If the cash flow is there, they're going to take the cash to pay the debt, and it's a
Yep.
high interest debt, right? You're gonna pay through the nose for it.
Massive.
And they lose no sweat about it, man. They're not going to worry about whether or not you didn't, oh yeah, sorry, there wasn't enough to cover the account. Oh no, and you're going to get overdraft fees on top of that now too, not only from the bank but also from the company because your payment wasn't there on time when it was supposed to be.
Yeah,
They
if you
don't
have a supplier, and you're not paying your suppliers, things like that, now you now have access to materials to do the job to begin with. So
exactly.
I mean, you're hosed all the way around. I might edit this part of the show out because I don't even I dislike MCA so much. I might just edit this part of the show out.
As I said, here's the thing: calculated correctly, you could use it for something productive. But you have to know that whatever debt you're going to pay on it, whatever interest rate you're paying on it, you have to know that that money is going to give you every bit of that return and then some. Or that
And
you
then
can
some.
you can fund it, right? I mean, businesses run negative at times, right? Businesses run at a loss at times. That's part of it. Now, nobody ever wants to admit that, and nobody wants to believe that that actually happens, but it does happen. And if your business runs in the negative, and again, it's not about profit or loss, it's more about cash flow, particularly in the first 3 to 5 years, right? I mean, certainly
Correct.
within the first 1 to 3, even so into the 3 to 5. But as you kind of grow out of that and you begin to put resources aside and things like that, it completely changes the mix. But in the interim, till you get to that point, there are circumstances where you like, I mean, we did it with the trucks. I borrowed it at 24% or 26%, I think. It was bad. It wasn't horrendous, but it wasn't great for sure. But I knew as soon as I got the trucks on the road, in 60 days when that loan's paid off, that truck's generating me $25,000 in cash and about $8,000 in profits, operating profits.
Right. I
So
mean, when you have a factoring like that, yeah. Okay, so like I said, you can get 100% of nothing, or you can get 80% of
right,
taking it from a $2 million company to a $5 million company. You know what I
right,
mean?
yep, absolutely. Again, I say you have to know your numbers, and if you don't know your numbers, that is not a game that you want to play, and it's certainly not a tool that you want to leverage. And if you're using MCAs to cover payroll or a shortfall, man, you're just that's the kiss of death right there. It's just a matter of time before you're going to succumb to the demons
But
that come along with that.
if you have a line of credit in place prior to that,
You
you
don't
can
have to go that
leverage
route,
that at a fairly decent rate.
right?
And like I said, and pay it back. And when you get at like, because the MCAs are going to be extortion, interest rates and things like that. And they're gonna, God forbid, if you're like a retail business, they're taking out every time you batch that merchant machine, they're taking it out before you get paid revenue,
Absolutely,
and you still got to make payroll, and you still got to. So that's the thing. So but if you plan it properly and you have some type of business credit in place, when you have those payroll shortfalls or those short-term shortfalls that you can pay in 90 days or less, you don't have to go to those crazy alternative routes. But that takes planning, and it takes working with your coach.
absolutely. Yeah, great point. All right, so let's move on to number 4: lenders fund performance, structure, and credibility. So banks and lenders approve businesses that look and operate like businesses. That means a proper entity structure, right?
That helps.
It means clean financial statements, like I referenced earlier, an EIN, a DUNS number, trade lines, right? These trade lines are credit cards, lines of credit, things like that. Maybe a line of credit with your vendor that sells you your turf, or whatever your products are you're buying. They extend you credit. Those are credit lines, right? Those are trade lines. Your DUNS number, setting that up. You should set that up within the first 90 days you have the business. Even though it's not going to do much for you, having it set up and begin to report on it. And there are things that you can do to begin to build your what we call corporate credit, which is an extension of your business credit. It's actually It's when the business credit becomes big boy credit, when it starts making that leap into that. And again, to Chris's point, that's years 2, 3, 4, 5, right? When you actually start getting to that point. But if you don't start building in advance in the initial 2 years, where they really want to extend you much, corporate credit per se. And to be clear, one of the distinguishing factors between corporate credit and business credit is business credit, they use your personal credit score to establish that initial line of credit. And it's personally guaranteed, exactly. However, in corporate credit, right, that's where the company owns all the debt, all the responsibility, all the obligation. And it helps in establishing, or at least extending, that corporate veil. The whole purpose of having an LLC or a corporation is to ensure that if something goes wrong, you personally aren't liable, right? You're not going to lose your home over it. Now, in the first couple of years, you're going to have to personally guarantee most everything that you take on, right?
Correct.
But as the business grows and you can get to that point, you can actually remove yourself personally from those financial obligations, refinance the debt with corporate debt that it's called non-recourse, meaning that they can't come back on you. They'll only take the assets from the business, which isn't great either. But you don't, as long as things are taken care of. The beauty of all of that is, if something went just horribly bad, you're not left homeless, which is exactly what will likely happen, particularly if you secured any kind of debt with your home or some significant assets that you might have, retirement funds, anything like that. You could literally lose all of those things if you use that to secure the debt, which you won't have to do once you get to a certain point. Again, could be 3, 5, even 7 or 10 years down the road before you get to that opportunity. But you won't have the opportunity to grow into that unless you start establishing it sooner. And there is a line in the sand at 10 years, and Chris alluded to this earlier. The banks start looking at 2 years. They start looking at corporate credit. They start looking at business credit. Sorry. They start looking at extending business credit to companies at that 2-year point. And there's, like I said, things you can do leading up to that, so you're ready when you hit that 2-year point, as opposed to it's 2 years, now let me start building my credit.
Let me start. Yeah.
This is exactly what we're talking about. This is what you don't want to do. Don't wait till the last minute to start setting things up.
Correct. Oh, and for everybody out there, when Eric was referring to his Dunn's number, he's talking about Dun and Bradstreet. So
yeah, thank you. Sorry. Yep. Good clarification. So a couple other things that I left out there was consistent revenue reporting and vendor accounts in good standing. Obvious, right? It's the same thing. Same way you would manage your personal credit, you got to manage your business credit. But there's a couple of other things, establishing that EIN. A couple of key things that, in establishing business credits, a couple of key things that we have talked about on other shows, I think is relevant to reference right now. Make sure that your company name and LLC or corporation is named correctly in all your documents. Inc., if it's an Inc., right, and all that kind of stuff. Make sure that your addresses match across all of your platforms, whether that's your website or some other solutions that you're using. Let's say the information you use for your credit card processing, the information that you use for your corporate mail, for your tax records and all that kind of stuff. If all that information isn't consistent, the banks, and Chris knows because he worked with the banks for many years, they're going to say, this doesn't match up. And if they don't automatically, if they don't automatically kick it out and just say, yeah, sorry, can't help you, you're going to have to go back and clean all that stuff up anyway, right? Mm-hmm. So to have a chance. And even then, that's only if the company's willing to take the time to give them the training, the coaching along with it, right?
Well, that's the thing too, because where we're talking about having your numbers in order, things like that. A lot of this takes discipline and detail. So, if you're not updating your addresses on your merchant process and things like that, if you're not taking the time to do that little bit of thing, I'm going to lend you money. Why?
Right. Yeah. Great point. Yeah.
Just something as simple as that. But it counts. It's why can't you, you're making how much money? You can't get somebody to update all your stuff, man, and keep your squared away. Just saying.
Exactly. Yeah. And we're saying address. There's also your phone numbers, your email addresses. Oh, and by the way, if you have a Gmail account and you're doing over $100,000 a year,
please don't do that.
Get your poop together.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a major pet peeve.
That's a huge red flag. Actually, it's a big red flag.
Absolutely. Yeah. From a bank's perspective, they look at that and they see that and they're like, oh, that's fly by night. Like, oh, I'm saving a few bucks by using a Gmail account. Get over yourself.
Yeah.
If you want to look real, you got to be
Play with
real
the
to
big
look real.
boys. Yeah.
That's it. All right. So the last thing we're going to touch on today, Chris, is the business credit accelerates the path to $1 million business. You mentioned it earlier. Only 6% of businesses ever break the $1 million mark. And one of the biggest reasons is undercapitalization. So we also know, and I've mentioned this on many shows before, 25% of businesses fail in the first year, 50% fail within 5 years, 75% fail within 10 years. Now, give or take 1 or 2% one way or the other, those numbers are pretty consistent. They have been for many, many years. We're talking 15, 20, 25, 30 years. Those numbers have been within those ranges. Here's the number one reason for those failures, or at least a contributing factor for all of those failures. 82% financial issues.
Mm-hmm.
Either a cash shortfall that they couldn't offset, meaning they didn't have access to cash credit, something that would help them offset that shortfall. And the shortfalls usually didn't last more than 2 quarters. So what we're talking about here, you build a business for 3 or 5 years, and because you can't manage a cash shortfall for 180 days, you're going to lose all the time and energy and money that you put into that business because you didn't have the resources to fund probably a 20% gap. I mean, we're not talking about like you took a $500,000 business and all of a sudden it went down to $100,000. We're talking a $500,000 business went to $400,000 and you couldn't absorb whatever was necessary to cover the expenses of that 100,000, which is not the whole 100,000. It's a percentage of that, right? So it's 50,000 a month, maybe, right? But that's where I said at $500,000, you should have at least 20%, more like 30%, 30% of 150,000. What's that's $167,000 or something like that. Give or take 150 some odd thousand. But that's about how much credit you'd want in a $500,000 business to make sure you have something to bridge the gap. That would have bought you 3, 4, 5 months if you're in a shortfall, and that gets you through that period of time, right? At least buys you at least the next 30 to 60 days to figure out how you can adjust and either cut back and or increase sales in some other facet, some other way to bring revenue in to offset that shortfall. Otherwise, it's just a matter of time before you bleed out.
Right. Right. And again, I'm going to keep harping on tax returns too, because obviously I'm a banker. That's just what we do. Again, if you're playing, if you want to play the long game, okay, like I said, you got to show profits. You know what I mean? If you're going to say, oh, I'm going to, write off my shoelaces, I'm going to write off like everything under the sun. I'm going to, I'm not going to pay, the taxes. And I'm going to, and God forbid, if you don't put yourself on the freaking payroll and you start taking owner's draws. And when you're first starting out, that's one thing. But when you want to get, again, you want to start thinking bigger,
right?
Sooner rather than later.
Right.
And if you're doing, just because your accountant told, oh, you can take an owner's draw, you don't got to pay income tax on, and it's not the third. It all sounds great until that day when you get that contract and they say, hey, we want to award you this contract. Here you go. You got to upfront that cash. You come to the bank showing 3 years worth of $100,000 losses, and you want me to finance what exactly?
Right.
Yeah. That's where it's going to bite you in the ass hard.
Huge. And not only will it affect you in that way, right, but it'll also affect you in a lot of other areas, right? So you want to go buy a home? Sorry.
Oh, if you're not on payroll? Oh
yeah. You or even if you are, right, but you're taking that small salary and then your K1s, your profit that you gain from the business, well, you're trying to whittle that down because you don't want to pay taxes on it. I get it. And here's the thing, do that. That's fine. But if you have a plan, if there are certain things you want to do, you want to buy a building for your business, you want to buy a house for yourself, you want to buy a second home, you want to buy new cars, those credit criteria, the credit criteria that would take to do any of those activities is going to require the business to make a profit. And so if you try and whittle down the profit and show nothing, you'll have zero accessibility to credit. I say zero, very little accessibility to credit, reduced it dramatically. I can't tell you how many times I talk to people who own convenience stores, gas stations, 7-Eleven, Circle, right? Not Circle K, AMPMs and things like that, right? They're notorious for wanting to write it all off and get it down to zero, pay as little as tax as possible. But then they go to buy a home and they're looking to buy that $1 million home because the business does 2.5 million in revenue.
Yeah.
I do 2.5 million in revenue, Chris. Now, those are notoriously low profit margin businesses, right? But let's just say, for the sake of argument, they're only showing $150,000 in profits. Well, whatever salary they're taking plus that $150,000 in profits, let's call it $200,000. They're going to qualify for about $600,000, maybe $700,000, possibly $800,000. Ain't going to be no $1.2, $1.5 million home. I guarantee you that. Even though if they could theoretically qualify for it, if they did the books the right way, but because of the way that they did it, totally fine. Reduce your taxes. I'm all for it. But when
it's legal, doesn't mean it's the right thing. It's legal, totally legal.
It's what are you trying to accomplish, right? Let's be clear. Right. What are you trying to? If you're looking to do something like that, it's not going to help you.
Are you trying to not pay taxes, or are you trying to actually build a legacy, something you can sell later on down the road? Because I said, I've dealt with doctors driving up in freaking Maseratis and this, that, but hey, I want to buy this clinic, this, that, and the third. It's like you're showing massive losses, and your personal
or you're breaking even, right? You're breaking even. Show that you can support the debt, right? That's
one way or the other. Even is just as much as a loss. I mean, as far as
as far as
you got to be able to show that you can repay the debt.
Right.
Period.
Yep.
Numbers are, numbers like facts are stubborn things.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? There was one last thing I wanted to touch on, Chris, before we jump off this. And it was something you alluded to earlier. It was the tools. What's the right tool for the solution that we're trying to solve for? Correct. I know that you're pretty passionate about this, so I'm going to let you take the lead on this one. You'd mentioned the whole line of credit. Well, what do you want a line of credit for? What do you think you need it for? Right.
Correct. That's the first question I'd ask.
So share a little bit about line of credit, what you see the need of a line of credit, when's it appropriate? What should I be getting the line of credit specifically to do? Those kind of things.
Yeah. So that was the first question first time, people always, come to me. They're like, hey, I need a line of credit for my business. Okay. That was literally the question. Why do you think you need a line of credit for your business?
Right.
Well, I need to buy this equipment, or I want to, buy the computer. I got to furnish my office, and we just bought a building, this and that, and things like that. To where it's like, that's not the correct use of a line of credit. Line of credit is for something that's going to be paid off in 90 days or less.
Right.
Okay. So maybe 180 at the most, but depends, but that's a whole, different thing we can have a conversation about. Usually I said 90 days or less. Things like, Eric was talking to before. You got to make payroll. You got to buy fuel. You got to buy materials to get a job started.
Right.
Okay. And then when the receivables come in, you got to be sure that you're paying all that back down to zero or something close to it, to where it's available again for the next job or the next cycle where, you got to buy fuel or something, somewhere in that range, because those things are not going to stop. Right. Especially if you're a trucking company or a landscaping company, construction company, fuel is never going to stop. Making payroll is never going to stop. Paying off vendors is never going to stop. So you got to be able to make sure you can make that. And if you need a line of credit, do it until your receivables come in, and then you can pay that off. But you got to pay your vendors, you got to pay your people, and you got to buy fuel. That's just all there is to it. If you're going to buy a truck, or if you're going to buy, a CNC machine or something to that effect, there's equipment loans for that. Those are term loans, 3 to 7 years maybe. And that's we expect to have a balance on that. If we see that on a balance sheet, it's a long-term debt, short-term debt, long-term debt. And we're going to look and say, okay, well, it's a term loan, making payments. Okay, payments X amount every month. Okay, everything's fine. They're making their payments. Everything's good. But if you have a line of credit and you max it out and you never revolve it, that's bad. Right. So if you could put this thing that should have been on maybe an equipment loan on that line of credit, and you max your line of credit, or you're at 70%, or let's say somewhere in that range, whatever, that's bad. That's going to reflect badly, because your line is not revolving, because it's a revolving line of credit. That's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to revolve. You can borrow against it, but make sure you're paying it off, or at least paying it down, significantly, things like that. So, and then, like I said, building loans are a whole different animal. We can get into, as far as that goes too. So,
all right. So, Chris, I just want to finish up today's session with one last discussion, which is the idea of using the right product. Right? You alluded to that earlier when we were talking about, how to use your credit, and more specifically, making sure that you're using the right type of credit solution for the solve that you have, that you're looking for your business. So I'd mentioned that you have kind of a passion for that. I wanted to allow you to kind of take that. But for instance, I know that one of the things you say is, somebody says to you, hey, I want a line of credit. And you say, okay, well, what do you want that line of credit for? What do you think you need it for? So that said, I'm gonna hand it to you, and just kind of let you share a couple of thoughts that you have about some of the different products and how they should be used and when they should be used.
Correct. Yeah. So again, yeah, that is one thing that I've, heard, a million times. I've heard it once. Just like, hey, I need a line of credit. Okay. And I would say exactly those words. What do you think you need a line of credit for? Oh, well, I need to buy this equipment. I need to buy this truck. I need to buy this and that. I'm like, okay, so we're using the wrong tool for the wrong job here, because like I said, when you have something like a line of credit, it's supposed to revolve, right? And when you have a line of credit, it's made for like I said, that cash flow shortfall, like Eric was talking about earlier. If it's something you're going to pay off in 90 days or less, so you got a job coming up. Okay, you got to go out and buy material. You're going to have payroll. You're going to have fuel costs. Whatever expenditures that you have for your particular industry, right? To get the job started, so you can put that cash out there, knowing that within 90 days, like I said, that receivable is going to come in, and you're going to be able to pay that down, or things like that. Or you're waiting on, let's say you finish one job, you're waiting for that receivable to pay, and you got another job coming up. Okay, well, I can get this job started, this receivable is coming, we can get this job going, so that way we can start getting that money to start coming in, things like that. So you got to, like I said, you got to know what tool to implement when. If you're going to buy anything, that's going to take more than 90 days to pay out. Let's say you want to buy a truck, so you want to buy a CNC machine, you want buy a piece of equipment. It could be stoves for a restaurant or whatever, things like that. Those are things you're going to want to put on a term loan. Okay, so those are going to be between like 3 and 7 years, maybe 10, but rarely. It depends on what the piece of equipment is. If something like a CNC machine, something maybe like that, but usually stuff, like if you're buying F-150s, or you're buying, stuff like that, it's definitely going to be like between 3 and 7 years. But they're expected to have a balance on them.
Right.
Those are expected to have a balance. So it's like, okay, we got a $50,000 term loan on this truck. We know you're making, whatever, $700 payments every month. Okay, fine. You're good. But if you're not revolving that line of credit, and you're not paying that line down, because you put that $50,000 on a line of credit as opposed to on a term loan, and you have a $60,000 line of credit, or whatever, now you're $100,000 line of credit, you just blew half of that.
Right.
So if you're not paying that down, you're paying that down $700 a month. You're not even going to cover the interest on it. So,
right.
You got to make sure that, like I said, you put the debt in the proper bucket, because it's even on your balance sheet, there's short-term debt, there's long-term debt, things like that. So you got to make sure we're using the proper tool that's going to go into the proper bucket. And like I said, buildings are an entirely different animal, and things like that as well. So just, and that was, obviously our job, or should have been our job. Not everybody did that. Because to educate the clients on what the proper tools are and how to use them and how to implement them properly.
Right. So yeah, and I've got a pet peeve on that as well, because one of my biggest frustrations is, Mr. and Mrs. Business Owner, you when you go to do whatever it is you're going to do, whatever you're going to buy, whatever you're going to, however you're going to finance whatever you're doing, you should be asking somebody who's got your best interest in mind in regards to ensuring that you select the right product. They're like, well, I need to talk to the banker. I'm like, okay, yeah, you can talk to the banker. I'm totally fine with that, but talk to me first. Here's why. I don't necessarily have a vested interest in whether or not what loan you get. As a matter of fact, at the end of the day, if the bank's the best option, I'm going to recommend that's what you do. Because as a business coach, my responsibility is to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I introduce you to, and even if I get paid a referral commission for making the introduction, if you use one of the products or solutions that I recommend, that's one thing, but I'm only going to recommend it if it makes sense for you, because if it doesn't, then I get egg on my face and I look like a jackass, right? So, and but here's the thing, and I say this all the time: if you go and buy a term loan, if you go to buy a term loan from a credit card person, what are they going to push you into?
Some credit
Right,
card. Yeah.
push you into the credit cards. They're not gonna sell you a term loan, because guess what? They don't make nearly as much money on the term loan as they do on the credit card.
If they make any money at all, if they even offer that product.
So, that's a great point. Even if they don't offer the product at all, right, then you're going to go somewhere else. And so here's the thing: the best thing you can do is go to somebody like us at My Biz Coaches, where we know all the different product solutions that are available, and help you identify the best one, and then you can decide, okay, you know what, I do have good credit. I should go directly to Wells Fargo, Chase, whoever, and go to the big banks, because they'll probably give you the most favorable rates as long as you're a paper, right?
Mm-hmm.
No,
paper depends on the
always.
industry too.
Depends
on the industry.
That's right. That's a good point. So you could have a paper and be in a bad industry, and they're not going to get the best rate.
You're in a restaurant, they're still going to look at you like you're side eye.
Yeah, great point. Right. You want to go to
construction company,
restaurant, right? So and to your point, you're obviously the types of products, right? The there's a purpose for a term loan. One of the things that I don't think people truly understand: a term loan is the best solution in most cases as it relates to any kind of long-term purchase, like you just alluded to, because the reality is it doesn't hit my credit the same way. Whether it's a personal credit or a business credit, it doesn't matter. It doesn't hit your credit the same way as you could take $100,000 loan to buy a piece of equipment. You could get a $100,000 line of credit. That $100,000 line of credit has a dramatic impact on your credit if you use it. And heaven forbid you start maxing it out. You get over 30, like we said earlier, you get over 50, you get over 75%. Each one of those is going to have a significant reduction in your credit score.
Well,
$100,000 loan over 7 years, you pay $700 a month. No big deal. Does it as virtually the only way you mess that up is if you don't make a payment on time.
Don't make the payment. Right. And that's the thing. As the banker, as I did, I'm looking at the balance sheet. I'm looking at everything. I'm saying, okay, well, their lines of credit, they have this amount lines of credit, things like that. Their balances are below 30%. They're paying them. They're using that. They're using that responsibly. They're using it. They're paying it down. Things like that. So I'm looking at the history of that. But I'm like, same thing with the term loan. Okay, term loan. Hey, they got this term loan for XYZ. They're making the payments. Everything's fine.
Right.
We're good. But like I said, when I see all that revolving credit, like I see those credit lines maxed out and they stay maxed out, okay, that's going to bring a red flag right now. Like, why? Why are we not paying these down? What's the problem?
Yep. Yeah. Great point. If you keep that level way up there, 80% of usage, 70% of usage, they're going to be like, they must have some cash flow problems. That's a red flag.
I will almost guarantee you, they put a piece of equipment or something on that line they should have did a term loan for. I'm willing to bet dollars at donuts to that. It's usually something along those lines, or they're just straight up shit mismanaging their finance. one or two. But again, back to Eric's point of, here at My Biz Coaches. Okay, what we're doing here, we're invested in your long-term success. Again, we're not interested because the bank. I mean, I did this for again, I might have been the exception to the rule. So I probably turned down more loans than most guys were getting because it wasn't the right fit for him. The guy, or God forbid, like I said, I don't even know who they're hiring at these banks anymore, but like these kids or whatever, it's like they're worried about the now. They're worried about, hey, can I make my mortgage? Can I, can I feed my kids? I got to sell this product.
Right.
I got to sell this product. It may not be the right fit for you, but it damn sure is the right fit for me.
Right.
You know what I mean? Where if you come to somebody like us at My Biz Coaches, we're invested in your long-term success. So we want to make sure you are in those proper tools. Not only that, we know the proper people to talk to because we know
Yes.
who's going to do what and who's not going to do. You go, like I said, you go to one of the big boys, and I worked at all of them. You go to one of the big boys and you want to do this restaurant deal or things like that. Good luck.
Yeah.
Things like that. You better be Jesus Christ walking on water while you're raising Lazarus from the dead all at the same time. You better be performing like all the miracles, to get that deal walked through, things like that. But we know the lenders that will do a loan and the lenders that won't. And we can point you in that right direction, save you a lot of time and frustration because you don't want everybody, start, you're getting declined for credit for this, that, and the third. It's like, you don't want to go down that road. And the guy again, not to badmouth the industry, but this is part of the reason why I got out. It's like the salesperson is going, oh yeah, we can get that deal done. Oh yeah, this looks good. The underwriter's like, what the F were you thinking?
Right.
You go in front of credit committee, and I've seen this happen a million times. Seriously, like, bro, like, what the F were you thinking?
Right.
We can even talk to this person. Did you see this?
Right.
Did you look at this? I've seen it 1,000 times.
Well, and to that point, Chris, I mean, you and I both know that there's a whole secondary market. So you call me and say, I need a loan for this. And I'm like, sure, I can help you. Because I know damn well, if I can't help you, I can introduce you to this guy I know who does these things called MCA loans.
Oh, Christ.
And he'll get it, and again. I'll get a commission.
I'm gonna blip that out or edit it. Yeah, you said it again. You said.
Well, I'm only saying it because these people need to know, right? It exists, and this is how people. This is why.
And they're evil.
Yeah, and this is why you get those phone calls and those emails that say, "Hey, we can loan to you, even if you have a 550 FICO. We can help you out." Yeah, because it has nothing to do with credit. It has everything to do with cash flow. And if you have the cash flow, whether or not that's profit, that's a completely different story. They don't ask about that. If you have the cash flow to support the loan, they'll loan you the money. And if you don't have enough competence in your finances to be able to do your own due diligence, you could very well make the deal with the devil and you end up screwing yourself, right? And losing your business in the process. So anyway, all of that said, I think to Chris's point, we're here to educate people and help them understand this whole process and understand the tools and the resources that are available. We're experienced in it. I've done it as a business owner on multiple businesses with multiple clients. Chris did it as the banker, as the finance person, both in the banking side as well as the broker side. So he knows the different games that they do, and I don't mean games necessarily in a bad way, just all the different things that need to be done. He's played that role. He knows what that looks like. As I said, I've represented my clients. I've done it for my own businesses, right? We know how to help people get through this. We have people in our team that will ensure that you don't get taken advantage of. And most importantly, we can help you get the tools and the resources you need. And we'll be honest with you. If we tell you, hey, this is the only option you have, and it happens to be that 3-letter word, well, then 3-letter acronym, then it may not be ideal, but it really only be your own option unless we can fix something, right? Which is what our first plan would be. So anyway, I say all of that to say the truth of the matter is at the end of the day, we're in your corner. We have your vested interest, even though we may not have a true fiduciary responsibility. I treat it like that. My coaches treat it like that. We're going to help you, but come talk to us. Have a conversation with us before you go to the banks, because you get to the banks and you're going to get sold. And to Chris's point earlier, that guy that's selling you that loan, that woman that's selling you that loan needs to sell that loan to make their payment, to maintain their quota, to make sure that they can make their mortgage payment at the end of the month, right? And no knock on them. There's nothing wrong with that. I was a commission salesperson, better part of my life. But the truth of the matter is, at the end of the day, this is an important topic for you, for your business, and for the success of your business long term. And you need to know all these different things. And if you get with the wrong person that doesn't, it's not even that they didn't try and screw you over, it's that they didn't take the time to help you understand.
They were too afraid to tell you no.
Yes,
that's the thing. Yeah. They were too afraid to hit, because they're like, hey, you know what? I want to make this deal, and they may even like you. They may even like your company and things like that. But they want to appease you. But the problem is they got to appease the underwriter.
Right.
that's who's going to, and their first answer is always freaking no. Every single time. You got to argue and fight to get the yes. Okay. Yep. So, and do they have the courage to fight that fight for you? Right. And, but I said, but if they're walking in there just throwing crap against the wall, see if it sticks, the underwriter's going to be like, no, I don't feel comfortable. But if you go in there, your client's comfortable, hey, my client, they're comfortable in their business. They know their numbers, this, that, and the third. And here's the good, the bad, and the ugly of the deal, this, that. And the more you explain it and you can get the underwriter comfortable, the more likely you're going to get that deal approved. But it's going to take effort. And it's got, but on the owner's part as well, because you got to know your stuff well enough to give me the ammo to go in front of the underwriter and say, hey, this is why this is a good deal.
Right. Yeah, great point.
And if you work with My Biz Coaches, you're going to get there.
Yeah. Well, and that's to your point, right, Chris? That's what we do. We help bring that solution. We bring that experience so that you get
we coach to it. Whether you do it or not, it's a whole different subject.
Well, that's a great point. Yeah, we'll coach you to it. Well, how many conversations have you and I sat on with people who are looking for financing, and we told them what they needed to do, and never to hear from them again? Right. So what did they do? Right. We don't know. Right. And they're not going to tell us what they actually did, especially if they're embarrassed to tell us now that it didn't work out, because I wouldn't be surprised.
They went and did that thing. You did that thing, didn't you? Yeah, you did.
And then they'll want to talk to our other buddy, Hayden. Right. Yeah. Who's going to try and figure out how to get him out of that situation.
Right. Correct.
All right. Well, great topic today. I really appreciate you kind of leaning in on this one, Chris. I know it's a lot of your background and your experience, and really, hopefully we can impress upon people. We have the resources, we have the solutions, we can create value for our clients in a number of different ways. Is just one other way that we help you, build the business that you want, and help you do it in the way that you can sustain for an extended period of time. So
right, and that's our motivation, not the paycheck, because
right.
The money is the byproduct. You know what I'm saying? But we set you up for long-term success. We're going to have a relationship, and quite frankly, we're going to make money the long term. Okay, right. We're not volunteering our time either.
Right.
Absolutely. Let's be clear. But so the longer you're in business and making money and thriving, the more money we're making. And that,
right. Absolutely.
we didn't get into this because of the goodness of our hearts either.
But we also didn't get in to screw people over to make a buck.
No, because like I said, you can shear a sheep many times. You only skin it once.
That's
so
right.
Like I said, so we're not in that business. So
that's right.
Whatsoever.
Awesome.
Or else
thanks again.
We wouldn't be working together.
That's right. Thanks again, Chris. I really appreciate it on this one.
All right, man. And we're out.
Later.
Wait. I got to give it to you. Wait, hold on a minute. Wait for it. Hey, man.
Awesome. You made my day.
Give it to you.